It's funny how certain quotes just sort of become wallpaper.
Oh, totally. Like you stop even seeing them.
Right. You see them printed over like a picture of a galaxy on some motivational page or maybe slapped on a coffee mug, and you completely stop thinking about what the words actually mean.
Yeah, they just turn into, noise.
Exactly. Well, today we're looking at a stack of research that takes one of those really famous quotes and completely flips it on its head.
It's a fascinating batch of source material.
It really is. Our deep dive today centers on a set of notes detailing Nikola Tesla's life, his discoveries, and his literal blueprint for building extraordinary wealth and mastery.
And the quote it anchors itself to is that classic one from Tesla.
Right, the one that goes, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Which is, it's the ultimate poster slogan, isn't it? It sounds almost completely mystical.
Yeah, it really does.
But the mission of our deep dive today is to decode those 11 words. Because the source material makes this remarkably compelling argument that this isn't just abstract philosophical poetry.
He wasn't just being poetic.
Not at all. Tesla wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was offering a highly precise neuroscientific operating system for human excellence.
Right, because when I first read that quote, I just thought, well, okay, sure, good vibes,
Yeah, a whole good vibes only thing.
Exactly. But diving into these documents, you realize it is incredibly literal. So let's start with that last word, vibration.
Okay, let's go.
The core idea presented here is that before anyone can build a masterpiece, there has to be a blueprint. Everything in the human-made world.
Everything.
Yeah, the chair you're sitting in right now, the screen you're looking at, it all began as a thought. And I was blown away to see the research pointing out that thoughts aren't just empty, invisible ideas.
They're literal, measurable vibrations in the brain.
Yes, measurable vibrations.
This is where we leave the realm of mysticism entirely and just, enter biology. When you think, your brain generates electrical activity.
Right.
And we can measure this right now with EEG machines. So when you're in deep sleep, your brain pulses with these slow delta waves.
Okay.
And when you're deeply relaxed, it produces theta waves. Calm awareness gives you alpha waves.
Yeah.
Every single thought literally produces a physical frequency.
That's wild.
And here is the crucial biological mechanism. When you repeat a specific thought, you are repeatedly firing that specific electrical signal.
So you're physically strengthening it.
Exactly. You physically strengthen the neural pathway associated with it. Over time, that pathway just becomes your default state. It becomes a belief.
And the historical examples in these notes of people deliberately manipulating those brainwaves, they're just wild. There's this whole section on the hypnagogic nap.
Oh, yes. That luminous little corridor of consciousness right between being fully awake and falling asleep.
It is so fascinating. The analytical mind, the part of you that constantly says, no, that won't work, or that's a stupid idea.
The critic.
Right, the critic completely dropped its guard. But your subconscious is still highly active. I read the anecdote about Thomas Edison in here and couldn't believe it.
The steel balls, right?
Yes. He used to sit in an armchair with a heavy steel ball bearing in each hand, and he'd let himself just drift off.
Right, entering that theta state.
Exactly. And the moment he crossed over into actual sleep, his muscles would relax, his hands would open, and the steel balls would crash onto metal plates he had placed on the floor.
Which would obviously wake him up immediately.
It would jolt him awake. And in that split second, he would frantically write down whatever bizarre, brilliant ideas had just surfaced.
It's a brilliant biological hack. He was intentionally bypassing his prefrontal cortex.
Because that's the logic center, right?
Yeah, it's the filter that tells you an idea is too weird to work.
Yeah.
By hovering in that theta wave state, Edison basically allowed the associative, highly creative parts of his brain to connect disparate ideas without any judgment.
Wow.
He was literally tuning his brain's vibration to a more receptive frequency.
Yeah.
And you see similar stuff with Salvador Dali holding a key or Paul McCartney dreaming the melody to Yesterday.
Or that chemist, right, Kekulé, who discovered the benzene ring because he had a dream about a snake eating its own tail.
Exactly. The subconscious was doing the heavy lifting.
But, you don't even have to be hovering on the edge of sleep to use this, do you? Because the research also dives heavily into visualization and self-talk while you are fully awake.
Yeah, deliberate mental rehearsal.
Right, like there's a breakdown of how Michael Phelps' coach trained him. Every single night, he had Phelps watch a mental videotape of the perfect race.
Just obsessive visualization.
Obsessive. He visualized it in such detail that during the 2008 Olympics, when his goggles completely filled with water.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, he was swimming entirely blind, but he didn't panic. He just counted his strokes. He knew exactly when to turn because he had already swam that exact race perfectly in his mind 1,000 times.
It's incredible.
So how does that actually work on a biological level?
Well, the neuroscience behind visualization is staggering. The brain, to a highly significant degree, actually cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one.
Wait, really? It can't tell the difference.
Not at the neural level, no. When Phelps was lying in bed visualizing his race, his motor cortex, which is the part of the brain that orchestrates physical movement, was firing in the exact same sequence as if he were actually in the pool.
So he was literally practicing while lying perfectly still.
Yes. He was physically laying down neural circuitry from a mattress, and furthermore, because he had pre-played the disaster scenario of his goggles filling with water and visualized himself staying calm.
He actively suppressed his amygdala,
Exactly.
which is the panic center.
Right. When the goggles filled with water in reality, his amygdala didn't trigger a freak out because the brain recognized the situation. It said, oh, we've been here before and we know exactly what to do.
That is just amazing.
It ties directly into the research on self-talk from psychologist Ethan Kross, as mentioned in the notes too. Kross found that speaking to yourself in the third person.
Oh, using your own name.
Yeah, using your own name instead of saying I.
Yeah.
It drastically improves performance under pressure.
Wait, so like saying you've got this instead of I've got this.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Or even using your actual first name. The mechanism behind it is fascinating. When you say, I am stressed, you're trapped in the emotional centers of the brain.
You identify with the stress.
Exactly. But when you use your own name, you force the brain to shift the processing of that stress out of the emotional amygdala and into the logical prefrontal cortex.
It creates distance.
It creates psychological distance, yes.
Yeah.
It activates the exact same neural circuits as receiving wise counsel from a trusted friend.
So you basically become your own mentor.
You literally become your own mentor just by changing the vibration of your internal dialogue.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you start talking about tuning your vibration and visualizing success, for a lot of people, that immediately sets off alarm bells.
Oh, for sure. The whole manifestation movement.
Yeah, the word manifestation gets thrown around a lot. And to be honest, it usually sounds like magical thinking to me.
Right.
If someone tells me to manifest a car, it sounds like I'm supposed to just sit on my couch, close my eyes, think really hard, and poof, a car appears in my driveway.
Which is obviously not how reality works.
No. But looking at the science in these documents, it's not magic at all. If I can offer an analogy, it seems a lot more like configuring the spam filter on your email inbox.
Interesting.
Yeah, like if your email gets 10,000 messages a day, you can't possibly read them all. Your filter hides the junk and only shows you the important stuff.
What's fascinating here is how incredibly accurate that analogy is for describing the reticular activating system, or, the RAS.
The RAS, right.
The notes detail exactly how the RAS functions. It's a literal bundle of neurons located at the base of your brainstem. And it acts exactly like that spam filter.
Okay.
Every single second, millions of bits of sensory information are bombarding your brain. Every sound, every color, every conversation in the room, the feeling of your clothes against your skin.
That's way too much data.
Way too much. If your brain tried to process all of it consciously, you would collapse from sensory overload instantly.
So it has to throw almost all of it out.
Right. The RAS decides what tiny fraction of a percent gets through to your conscious awareness. And how does it decide? Based entirely on what you have repeatedly told it is important.
Oh, like the classic red car syndrome. You decide to buy a red car, and suddenly everywhere you drive, you see red cars.
Yes, exactly.
And you think, wow, everyone bought a red car this week. But they didn't. They were always there. Your RAS just wasn't prioritizing them before.
You nailed it. So when you tune your internal frequency through disciplined visualization, logical thinking, and upgraded self-talk, you aren't magically summoning wealth or opportunities out of thin air.
You're just changing the filter.
You're simply programming your RAS.
Mm-hmm.
You are telling the bouncer at the door of your brain, hey, this specific type of opportunity is highly important to me.
And suddenly you see it.
Suddenly, you begin to see the resources, the people, and the paths that were always right in front of you. They were previously invisible simply because your filter was set to a different frequency.
That makes so much sense.
You don't manifest what you lazily wish for.
Yeah.
You manifest what you literally are.
Which brings up a massive question.
Okay?
Let's say my spam filter is perfectly configured. I've got the vision, my RAS is primed, my vibration is flawless. Why isn't that enough? Why do people with brilliant vision still fail constantly?
Because a perfectly tuned radio is completely useless if you never plug it into a power source.
Ah.
Having the blueprint is step one. To make the blueprint a physical reality, you need a sustained physical rhythm. And that is Tesla's second pillar. Frequency.
The architecture of action.
Precisely. If you look at human behavior, a single day of intense heroic effort doesn't create mastery.
Right. Doing it once doesn't make you an expert.
No, it might make a good movie montage, but it doesn't change your biology. Frequency is about what you do repeatedly, without exception.
And the biology behind this completely blew my mind. The research references Daniel Coyle's concept of deep practice and breaks down the actual neuroscience of repetition.
The myelination process.
Yes, it comes down to myelination. When you repeat a skill, whether it's playing a chord on a guitar, writing code, or practicing a sales pitch, the specific neurons involved in that action fire together.
They spark simultaneously.
Right. And with each repetition, this incredibly important biological substance called myelin wraps around the nerve fibers, the axons.
And we need to explain why that's so critical. An axon is basically a biological wire carrying an electrical signal. But naked axons are leaky.
Leaky.
Yeah, as the electrical impulse travels down the nerve, a lot of the charge sort of dissipates into the surrounding tissue. It's slow, and it requires massive conscious effort to force the signal through.
Okay, so where does myelin come in?
Myelin is a fatty, insulating sheath. It wraps around that wire like the rubber insulation on a power cable.
So the signal can't leak out.
Exactly. It forces the electrical impulse to jump rapidly down the nerve fiber. The more you repeat the action, the thicker the myelin gets.
And the faster the signal becomes.
Yes. A neural pathway that was once slow, clumsy, and exhausting becomes swift, precise, and entirely automatic. That is the literal physical foundation of genius.
You just repeat the action until it requires zero cognitive load.
Precisely.
But, repetition requires extreme discipline. And the documents bring in a genuinely counterintuitive perspective on this, referencing Jocko Willink's famous phrase.
Discipline equals freedom.
Yes. Discipline equals freedom.
I think most of us naturally view discipline as a prison. It sounds like restricting yourself, forcing yourself to do things you hate, waking up in the dark.
It has a bad reputation.
It does. But the argument here is that a rigid, structured routine actually liberates you by eliminating decision fatigue.
Think about the volitional energy it takes to negotiate with yourself every morning. Am I going to exercise today? Should I hit snooze? When am I going to do my deep work? Should I check my email first?
Just thinking about that exhausts me.
Right. Every single one of those micro decisions drains your brain's finite daily supply of glucose and cognitive energy.
You exhaust yourself before you've even done the work.
Exactly. But if you have unbending discipline and a set routine, those micro decisions just vanish. You don't decide whether to work out, you just do it because it's Tuesday.
The choice is already made.
By eliminating the negotiation, you reserve all of your peak creative and analytical capacity for the actual deep work that requires it. The discipline of the routine provides the freedom to create. So, what does this all mean when things aren't working?
What do you mean?
Because let's be real, we've all been there. You start the new habit, you set the routine, you do the work for 3 weeks, and nothing happens. My life doesn't look any different.
Ah, yes, the plateau.
The research brings up this brilliant concept called the Valley of Disappointment, which plots out latent potential.
It's like a great visual.
Yeah, if I can use another analogy here, it's like heating a pot of water on the stove. You are putting in all this energy, cranking up the heat, doing the work.
But the water isn't boiling yet.
Right. The water looks exactly the same at 90 degrees as it did at 50 degrees. It's just sitting there. If you don't know how boiling works, you might think, my frequency isn't working, the stove is broken, and you turn it off.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy perfectly captures what separates the amateur from the master. People start a new habit. Think of the gym in January.
Oh yeah. By January 12th, the place is empty.
Right. People put in the effort, and they expect linear, immediately visible results. When the mirror doesn't look different after 2 weeks, they entered that valley of disappointment and they quit.
But the progress was happening.
It was happening invisibly beneath the surface. The myelin was being built, the neural pathways were strengthening, the water was heating up. They just quit before the boiling point.
You're just degrees away from a massive shift, but you can't see it yet.
And the notes apply this beautifully to Tesla's own life. The man endured brutally long periods of absolute silence. He had no funding, no recognition. His ideas were mocked by the scientific establishment.
But he kept going.
His consistency wasn't dependent on external validation.
Yeah.
He understood latent potential. He trusted his internal frequency and kept building the myelin, kept doing the work through those invisible seasons.
In a highly practical way, the research suggests building that consistency is through what James Clear calls habit stacking.
Oh, that's a brilliant technique.
It is. Because trying to build a brand new habit from scratch relies purely on willpower, which we know fails. Instead, you tie the new behavior to an existing one using a cue, a routine, and a reward.
So you don't just say, I'm going to read more.
Right. You say, after I pour my morning coffee, which is a deeply ingrained habit you already do automatically, I will sit down and read one chapter.
You're anchoring it.
You are literally hijacking the existing neural pathway of the coffee habit to pull the new habit along like a train car.
You automate excellence. It ensures the rhythm is maintained effortlessly. But as we look at the whole picture, having a vision and maintaining a rhythm brings us to an inevitable physical roadblock.
Okay, what's the roadblock?
Well, you have the tuned vision, which is vibration. You have the daily compounding habits, which is frequency. But what powers the machine itself?
Right, because if I'm waking up at 5 a.m., grinding out the routines, stacking the habits, and never stopping, eventually I just crash.
Right. And that brings us to Tesla's final word, energy. The absolute capacity to do work without burning out.
The section on the physics of momentum in the research was really eye-opening for me. It argues that the start-stop cycle is the absolute most destructive pattern in human achievement.
It's devastating to progress.
It essentially applies Newton's first law of motion to human psychology. An object at rest stays at rest. An object in motion stays in motion. Overcoming inertia costs exponentially more energy than just maintaining movement.
Consider starting a new project. The first week is just agonizing, right? The friction is immense because you are overcoming total inertia.
Just opening the document is painful.
The energy cost of just getting the wheel to turn is enormous. But by week 10, the momentum carries you forward. The wheel spins itself.
So you shouldn't stop.
The danger is that every time you stop, completely, say, taking a month off because you feel burned out, you bleed out all that accumulated momentum.
You have to start all over again.
Yes. When you decide to start again, you force yourself to pay that massive, exhausting startup cost of overcoming inertia all over again. Keeping the engine running, even at a low idle on your worst days, is vastly more biologically efficient than stopping and restarting.
But wait, you still have to rest? I mean, we aren't actual machines. And the research goes incredibly deep into the biological necessity of physical and mental recovery.
Absolutely.
For physical energy, it highlights how movement releases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Yes, which is often referred to as miracle grow for the brain.
Right, because it literally promotes the formation of new neurons and synapses. But then it gets into sleep, specifically the glymphatic system. I had honestly never heard of this before.
It's a relatively recent and incredibly vital neuroscientific discovery.
How does it work?
Well, when you sleep, your glial cells, which are the supporting cells in your brain, they literally shrink by up to 60%.
Wow, 60%.
Yes. And this opens up the spaces between your neurons, and cerebrospinal fluid rushes in like a dishwasher. It washes away all the metabolic ash and toxic byproducts like amyloid beta protein.
Like stuff that builds up while you're thinking.
Exactly. It accumulates while you are awake. If you don't sleep deeply, the trash just doesn't get taken out and your cognitive performance plummets.
And it's not just sleep at night. It talks about ultradian rhythms during the day, too.
Right, the 90-minute cycles.
Yeah, the human brain operates best by working deeply for about 90 minutes and then requiring genuine rest.
Because after 90 minutes of intense focus, your brain has severely depleted its local supply of neurotransmitters like dopamine and acetylcholine.
So pushing through doesn't help.
Pushing through that exhaustion doesn't increase your output. It rapidly degrades the quality of your work. We require periodization, the intentional alternation of high-intensity output with genuine recovery.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because I am reading all this rock-solid science about the absolute necessity of sleep, the glymphatic system, ultradian rhythms.
Right?
The research explicitly states that sacrificing sleep for productivity is a self-defeating trade-off. But earlier in these very same documents, it casually drops the fact that Nikola Tesla famously slept only 2 hours a night.
Sounds like a total contradiction.
How on earth do we reconcile that? Are we supposed to protect our physical energy or destroy ourselves for our work? It feels like a massive disconnect.
This raises an important question, and it highlights a very common misunderstanding about historic high performers. The source material actually clarifies this nuance beautifully.
Oh, it does?
Yes, Tesla slept very little at night in a traditional bed, sure, but he deeply supplemented that brief sleep with profound states of mental rest during the day.
Like naps.
Deeper than naps. He entered trances that closely resembled deep meditation. His mind wasn't actively solving problems or burning neurotransmitters, it was simply receiving.
Ah, I see.
He had extreme periods of manic output, followed by extreme intentional neural withdrawal. But beyond his sleep habits, there is a much more profound reason his energy seemed limitless.
How was it?
It comes down to the ultimate performance variable discussed in the notes: purpose.
Purpose. The fuel beneath the fuel.
Exactly. The notes draw heavily on the work of psychiatrist Viktor Frankl.
Who wrote Man's Search for Meaning?
Yes. Frankl survived the horrific conditions of the concentration camps and observed firsthand that purpose is not some philosophical luxury for idealists. It is a literal, life-sustaining biological force.
It keeps you alive.
When external motivation completely fails, when you face failure, poverty, or sheer physical exhaustion, a deep, intrinsic sense of meaning is what allows the human organism to endure.
It changes the way your body processes the effort.
It completely reframes it. The research argues that work disconnected from meaning is exhausting even in tiny doses. Sitting at a desk doing something you find pointless will drain you by noon.
Oh, absolutely. We've all felt that.
But work that is perfectly aligned with a genuine contribution actually replenishes your energy while you are doing it. Tesla didn't necessarily have more biological energy in his cells than the rest of us. He had total alignment.
He experienced his work almost as a form of worship. It wasn't a job to him. It was a mission to end human suffering and literally bring light to the dark world.
And that kind of profound purpose produces a psychological freedom that just unleashes enormous, almost terrifying amounts of energy.
It transforms your physical and mental energy into something almost indestructible.
It is the absolute apex of the energy hierarchy.
This entire deep dive has been such a paradigm shift. If you are listening to this right now, I want you to think about how this applies practically to your own life today.
Take it out of the abstract.
Right. The blueprint of your reality, the lens through which you see the world, is your vibration, your habitual thoughts, your self-talk, what you deliberately tune your mind to. The engine that turns that invisible blueprint into a tangible reality is your frequency, your consistent, unsexy, disciplined daily actions that build myelin and compound invisibly in the dark. And the fuel that keeps you running, that keeps the engine roaring without burning out, is your energy, your physical vitality, your mental recovery, and ultimately your deepest, most authentic purpose.
They're not abstract concepts or woo-woo slogans. They are the literal biological operating system of every great life ever lived.
The research leaves us by asking what you will do with this code. But I want you to think about this specific idea. If your reticular activating system literally hides what you do not believe is important or possible, what invisible, life-changing opportunity did you walk right past today?
That's a powerful question.
What door was open that you couldn't even see simply because your internal radio is tuned to the frequency of doubt rather than the frequency of possibility? Tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, before you let the world dictate your mood, what frequency will you choose to broadcast?